When you hear the name Tesla, one face dominates your imagination: Elon Musk, the billionaire tech mogul who became the public face of the electric vehicle revolution. His charisma, his bold predictions, his Twitter storms, they've all cemented him as the visionary behind the company that changed transportation forever. But here's the uncomfortable truth that history tried to bury. Elon Musk didn't found Tesla Motors. He wasn't the genius who conceived the first electric sports car that could outperform gasoline-powered vehicles. That honor belongs to two brilliant engineers whose names have been systematically erased from the narrative: Martin Eberhard and Marc Tarpenning. In the year 2003, while the automotive industry remained stubbornly addicted to internal combustion engines and dismissed electric vehicles as slow, impractical toys for tree-huggers, two men dared to imagine something revolutionary. Martin Eberhard and Marc Tarpenning weren't billionaire playboys or celebrity entrepreneurs. They were hardcore engineers, problem solvers who had already tasted success in the tech world. Eberhard, with his background in electrical engineering and computer, had co-founded an early ebook company called Nouveau Media. Tarpenning, equally brilliant and methodical, brought financial acumen and technical expertise that perfectly complemented his partner's vision. Together, they saw what the automotive giants couldn't or wouldn't see: that electric vehicles didn't have to be compromises. The conventional wisdom in 2003 was brutally clear. Electric cars were golf carts with delusions of grandeur. They were slow, expensive, limited in range, and about as sexy as a beige refrigerator. The major automakers had tried and failed spectacularly with electric vehicles in the 1990s, most notably with GM's EV1, which the company famously recalled and destroyed despite passionate protests from owners who loved their cars. The message from Detroit was unambiguous. Consumers didn't want electric vehicles, the technology wasn't ready, and anyone who thought otherwise was living in a fantasy world. But Eberhard and Tarpenning weren't deterred by industry groupthink. They were energized by it. What drove these two engineers to challenge the titans of the automotive industry? It wasn't just environmental consciousness, though that played a role. It was something deeper: an engineer's obsession with solving an impossible problem, combined with the entrepreneur's hunger to disrupt a complacent market. Eberhard, in particular, had become fascinated with the potential of lithium-ion batteries after witnessing their rapid improvement in laptop computers. If these batteries could power increasingly sophisticated electronics, why couldn't they power a car? Not just any car, but a sports car that could accelerate faster, handle better, and cost less to operate than anything burning gasoline. The vision was audacious. Some would say it was insane. Before we dive deeper into this untold saga of innovation and betrayal, I want you to do something for me. If you're captivated by stories where true innovation meets corporate drama, where the real heroes often get written out of history, then subscribe to Motor Chronicles right now. We're dedicated to uncovering the stories that shaped our world, the ones that don't always make the headlines but deserve to be remembered. And before we continue, tell me in the comments, where are you watching this from? Are you an engineer who understands the technical brilliance we're about to explore? An entrepreneur who's faced similar challenges? Or simply someone who loves discovering the truth behind the myths? Your voice matters here. Now, back to 2003. Eberhard and Tarpenning officially incorporated Tesla Motors, naming it after Nikola Tesla, the Serbian-American inventor and electrical engineer whose pioneering work with alternating current and electric motors had been overshadowed by Thomas Edison's better publicity machine, an irony that wouldn't be lost on them later. The founder's strategy was counterintuitive but brilliant. Instead of trying to build a practical, affordable electric car for the masses, an approach that had failed repeatedly, they would start at the top. They would create a high-performance sports car for wealthy early adopters who valued innovation and performance over practicality. This wasn't just a business strategy. It was a necessary step in a long-term vision to eventually bring electric vehicles to everyone. The challenges they faced were staggering. Battery technology was expensive and unproven at automotive scale. The energy density wasn't there yet. Weight was a massive problem. Charging infrastructure was non-existent. Supply chains for electric vehicle components barely existed because there was no market demand. And perhaps most daunting of all, they had to convince investors to pour millions of dollars into a venture that every expert said was doomed to fail. The automotive industry had countless examples of failed startups littering its history. Building cars required massive capital, complex supply chains, rigorous safety standards, and manufacturing expertise that took decades to develop. Who were two tech entrepreneurs to think they could succeed where giants had failed? But Eberhard and Tarpenning had something the giants didn't. They had nothing to lose and everything to prove. They began by licensing an existing sports car chassis from Lotus, the British manufacturer known for lightweight, high-performance vehicles. This was pragmatic genius. Instead of trying to design a car from scratch, they would focus their energy and limited resources on perfecting the electric powertrain. The batteries, the motors, the power electronics, the software that made it all work together. They weren't just building a car. They were pioneering a completely new approach to automotive engineering. The early days of Tesla were a masterclass in startup hustle and technical problem-solving. Working out of a modest office in San Carlos, California, the founders assembled a small team of engineers who shared their vision. These weren't automotive industry veterans. They were mostly from Silicon Valley's tech sector, bringing a software-driven, iterative approach to a hardware problem. They faced setbacks that would have crushed lesser entrepreneurs. Battery packs that overheated, motors that couldn't deliver the torque they needed, cost projections that spiraled out of control, investor pitches that ended in rejection. Every day brought a new crisis, a new seemingly insurmountable obstacle. Yet they persisted. They refined their designs through countless prototypes. They tested, failed, learned, and tested again. They formed partnerships with suppliers who were willing to take a chance on an unproven technology. Slowly, painfully, the vision began to take physical form. The Tesla Roadster was emerging, a sleek, lightweight sports car powered entirely by electricity, capable of accelerating from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 4 seconds, with a range that shattered every assumption about what electric vehicles could achieve. It was beautiful. It was fast. It was everything the automotive establishment said was impossible. But as the Roadster moved from concept to prototype, as the technical challenges began to yield to engineering brilliance, a new challenge emerged, one that would ultimately prove more dangerous than any battery problem or motor design flaw. Tesla needed serious capital to move from prototype to production, to build the manufacturing infrastructure, to scale the supply chain. And in early 2004, that capital arrived in the form of a Series A investment led by an ambitious entrepreneur named Elon Musk, fresh off his PayPal fortune and hungry for his next big challenge. What seemed like salvation would eventually become the catalyst for one of Silicon Valley's most controversial founder disputes. The irony is almost too perfect. The two engineers who conceived Tesla, who solved the impossible technical problems, who proved that electric vehicles could be desirable and high performance, their names have been virtually erased from public consciousness. Meanwhile, the investor who arrived after the company was founded, after the core vision was established, became synonymous with the brand itself. How did this happen? Why did the narrative shift so dramatically? And what does this tell us about innovation, credit, and the way history remembers revolutionary companies? These are the questions we're going to answer in this saga. As we prepare to dive deeper into the technical brilliance of the Roadster, the corporate drama that would tear the founding team apart, and the lasting legacy of the true founders, remember this. Behind every revolutionary product, behind every company that changes the world, there are often unsung heroes whose stories deserve to be told. Martin Eberhard and Marc Tarpenning are those heroes, and their story is about to unfold. Building a revolutionary electric sports car from scratch wasn't just difficult. It was considered impossible by virtually every expert in the automotive industry. Martin Eberhard and Marc Tarpenning were about to embark on an engineering journey that would test every assumption about what electric vehicles could achieve. They weren't just designing a car. They were rewriting the fundamental rules of automotive engineering, and every single component presented challenges that had never been solved at this scale before. The heart of their vision was the battery pack, and it was simultaneously the most critical and most problematic element of the entire vehicle. Lithium-ion batteries had revolutionized consumer electronics, powering laptops and cell phones with unprecedented energy density. But scaling that technology to power a 2,000-pound sports car capable of highway speeds and real-world range? That was uncharted territory. The energy requirements were staggering. A laptop battery contained maybe 50 watt-hours of energy. The Roadster would need over 50,000 watt-hours, 1,000 times more power. This wasn't just an engineering challenge. It was a leap into the unknown that could easily end in catastrophic failure. Eberhard and his engineering team made a decision that seemed crazy to traditional automakers but was pure Silicon Valley thinking. Instead of trying to develop massive custom battery cells, they would use thousands of the same small cylindrical lithium-ion cells found in laptop computers. The 18650 format cells, 18 millimeters in diameter, 65 millimeters long, were mass-produced, relatively inexpensive, and had proven reliability. The Tesla team would pack over 6,900 of these cells into a sophisticated battery management system that could monitor and control each cell individually. It was an approach that combined commodity hardware with revolutionary software, treating the battery pack like a massive parallel computing cluster. But this elegant solution created nightmarish problems. How do you prevent thermal runaway when you have nearly 7,000 lithium-ion cells packed together? A single cell overheating could trigger a cascade failure that would turn the entire battery pack into a fireball. The cooling system had to be perfect. The battery management software had to monitor voltage, temperature, and current for every cell, making thousands of calculations per second to ensure safe operation. And the entire system had to survive the brutal conditions of automotive use: vibration, temperature extremes, high-speed charging, and years of daily cycling. One engineering mistake could mean disaster, lawsuits, and the death of the company before it even launched. The electric motor presented its own set of impossible challenges. Traditional automakers had decades of experience with internal combustion engines, an engineering discipline refined through millions of vehicles and countless iterations. Electric motors for automotive applications? That was practically a blank. The Roadster's motor had to deliver instant torque for neck-snapping acceleration, maintain power at highway speeds, fit within the tight confines of the Lotus chassis, operate efficiently across a wide range of speeds, and survive the harsh automotive environment. Eberhard and Tarpenning partnered with AC Propulsion, a small California company that had developed promising electric motor technology, but adapting it for production use required solving problems nobody had encountered before. Every component of the Roadster required this level of intense problem-solving. The power electronics that converted DC battery power to AC motor power had to handle enormous currents without overheating or failing. The transmission had to translate the motor's high-speed rotation into usable torque at the wheels while being lightweight and compact. The cooling system had to manage heat from the battery pack, the motor, and the power electronics simultaneously. The charging system had to safely pump thousands of watts into the battery pack without causing damage. And all of these systems had to work together seamlessly, controlled by sophisticated software that didn't exist when they started. The financial pressures were crushing. Every prototype iteration cost money they barely had. Every supplier negotiation was a battle to get components at prices that wouldn't bankrupt the company. Eberhard spent his days oscillating between engineering meetings where they debugged technical problems and investor pitches where he had to sell a vision that was still more dream than reality. The early investor money was burning fast, and they needed to show progress, real, tangible progress, or the funding would dry up and Tesla would join the graveyard of failed automotive startups. Testing revealed problems they hadn't anticipated. Early prototypes had battery packs that overheated during aggressive driving, forcing emergency shutdowns. The motor controller had software bugs that caused erratic behavior at high speeds. The regenerative braking system, which captured energy during deceleration to recharge the batteries, didn't work smoothly, making the car jerky and unpleasant to drive. The range calculations were wildly optimistic. Real-world driving revealed that cold weather, aggressive acceleration, and highway speeds drained the batteries much faster than their models predicted. Each problem required weeks or months to solve, and new problems kept emerging. But slowly, painfully, through thousands of hours of engineering work and countless failed experiments, the impossible started becoming possible. The battery management system evolved into a sophisticated piece of software that could predict and prevent thermal problems before they occurred. The motor and power electronics were refined through iteration after iteration until they delivered smooth, powerful acceleration across the entire speed range. The cooling system was redesigned multiple times until it could handle even the most demanding driving conditions. The software that tied everything together matured from a buggy prototype into a robust control system. The breakthrough moment came during a test drive in late 2005. Eberhard himself was behind the wheel of a prototype that incorporated all their latest refinements. He accelerated hard onto a highway on-ramp, and the Roadster responded with violent, immediate thrust that pinned him back in the seat. 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 4 seconds, performance that matched or exceeded exotic supercars costing 3 times as much. The motor was silent except for a futuristic whine. The handling was sharp and responsive, the Lotus chassis working perfectly with the low-mounted battery pack that lowered the center of gravity. And when he checked the range estimate, it showed over 200 miles on a full charge. It worked. After years of struggle, after countless setbacks and near failures, they had done what everyone said was impossible. But creating a functioning prototype was only the beginning. Mass production presented an entirely new set of challenges that would make the engineering problems look simple by comparison. They needed to establish relationships with suppliers who could deliver components at automotive scale and quality. They needed to set up manufacturing processes that could build cars consistently and safely. They needed to achieve regulatory certifications that would allow them to legally sell the vehicle. They needed to establish service infrastructure for a car that no mechanic in the world knew how to repair. And they needed to do all of this while burning through cash at a terrifying rate, racing against the clock before the money ran out. Martin Eberhard and Marc Tarpenning had proven that electric vehicles could be fast, beautiful, and desirable. They had solved technical problems that the entire automotive industry said were unsolvable. They had created a working prototype that turned heads and changed minds everywhere it appeared. But as they raced toward production, as the company grew and the stakes escalated, new challenges were emerging. Challenges that weren't about engineering or technology, but about power, control, and the fundamental question of who truly owned the vision they had created. The technical battle had been won, but the corporate battle was just beginning. By 2006, Tesla Motors had accomplished what the entire automotive industry said was impossible. They had created a working electric sports car that could outperform gasoline-powered vehicles. But having a revolutionary prototype and actually challenging the automotive establishment were two entirely different battles. Martin Eberhard and Marc Tarpenning were about to discover that the real war wasn't against technical limitations. It was against an industry that had spent a century perfecting the art of resistance to change. The automotive giants, General Motors, Ford, Toyota, Volkswagen, controlled a global industry worth trillions of dollars. They had massive research budgets, armies of engineers, decades of manufacturing expertise, and relationships with suppliers built over generations. They owned the dealerships, controlled the repair networks, and had the marketing muscle to shape consumer perception. And they had already decided, based on their failed experiments in the 1990s, that electric vehicles were a dead end. When Tesla announced their intention to bring the Roadster to market, the response from Detroit and beyond ranged from dismissive laughter to active hostility. The skepticism wasn't just about Tesla's audacity as a startup. It was fundamentally about the technology itself. Industry veterans pointed to undeniable facts. Batteries were too expensive, too heavy, and had limited range. Charging infrastructure didn't exist. Consumers had range anxiety and wouldn't accept the limitations. The business case didn't work. Every major automaker had studied electric vehicles exhaustively and concluded they weren't viable for decades to come. Who were these Silicon Valley engineers to think they knew better than the accumulated wisdom of the automotive industry? The arrogance alone was offensive to established players who had built their empires on internal combustion engines. But Eberhard and Tarpenning had something the giants didn't. They had nothing to protect. The major automakers were prisoners of their own success, locked into manufacturing systems optimized for internal combustion engines, supply chains built around traditional components, and dealer networks that made money on maintenance and repairs that electric vehicles didn't need. Disrupting themselves would cannibalize their existing businesses, anger their suppliers, and require massive capital investments with uncertain returns. Tesla, by contrast, had no legacy to protect, no infrastructure to abandon, and no stakeholders demanding they preserve the status quo. They were free to build the future because they had no past. The battle lines were drawn most clearly around performance and desirability. For decades, the automotive industry had positioned electric vehicles as compromises, something you bought to make an environmental statement, not because you actually wanted to drive it. Electric cars were slow, boring appliances for people who didn't care about the joy of driving. Tesla's strategy was to obliterate that narrative so completely that it could never recover. The Roadster wasn't a compromise. It was a sports car that happened to be electric. 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds. A top speed over 125 miles per hour. Handling that matched or exceeded gasoline-powered sports cars thanks to the low center of gravity from battery placement. And it was beautiful. A sleek, aggressive design that turned heads everywhere it went. Every test drive became a conversion experience. Automotive journalists who arrived expecting to write snarky reviews about Silicon Valley hubris left as believers. The instant torque of electric motors' maximum power available from 0 RPM created acceleration that felt supernatural compared to gasoline engines that had to rev up through their power bands. There was no transmission to shift, no turbo lag, no hesitation. Just pure, immediate, violent thrust that pinned you to the seat and rewrote everything you thought you knew about what cars could do. One by one, the skeptics were confronted with undeniable reality. This electric car was faster, more exciting, and more technologically advanced than anything the established automakers were producing. But the automotive establishment wasn't going down without a fight. As Tesla gained attention and started taking deposits for the Roadster, the backlash intensified. Industry analysts published reports questioning Tesla's ability to achieve production volume, predicting the company would fail like countless automotive startups before it. Some established automakers began announcing their own electric vehicle concepts, conveniently timed to steal Tesla's thunder and suggest that the major players were already working on better solutions. Behind the scenes, there were whispers that Tesla's success was a fluke, that the real challenges of mass production and long-term reliability would expose them as amateurs playing in a professional's game. The supply chain battles were particularly brutal. Tesla needed components from suppliers who were deeply embedded with traditional automakers. When you're ordering parts in quantities of hundreds instead of hundreds of thousands, and you're asking suppliers to modify their products for electric vehicle applications they've never dealt with, you have no leverage. Some suppliers simply refused to work with Tesla, seeing them as a distraction from their core customers. Others quoted prices so high that Tesla had to find alternatives or develop components in-house. Every single part required negotiation, persuasion, and often creative problem-solving to even get suppliers to take the company seriously. The financial pressure was relentless. Building cars requires obscene amounts of capital for tooling, for inventory, for testing and certification, for building a service infrastructure. Traditional automakers could amortize these costs across millions of vehicles. Tesla was planning to build maybe a few hundred Roadsters in the first year, meaning every car had to carry a disproportionate share of the development costs. The pricing had to be high enough to cover costs, but not so high that wealthy early adopters would balk. They were threading a needle while competitors watched and waited for them to fail. Yet despite everything, the industry skepticism, the supplier resistance, the financial constraints, the technical challenges, Tesla kept moving forward. Eberhard and his team continued refining the Roadster, solving manufacturing problems, establishing relationships with suppliers willing to take a risk, and building the infrastructure needed to support customers. Every setback became a lesson. Every problem they solved became proof that the skeptics were wrong. They were demonstrating week by week and month by month that a small team of dedicated engineers could challenge an industry that had grown complacent and risk-averse. The irony was becoming impossible to ignore. The same automotive giants who dismissed Tesla as irrelevant were starting to pay very close attention to what the startup was achieving. Engineers from traditional automakers were quietly reaching out, curious about how Tesla had solved problems their own company said were unsolvable. The Roadster was appearing at auto shows and generating buzz that established electric vehicle concepts couldn't match. And most tellingly, some of the major automakers began accelerating their own electric vehicle development programs. Not because they had suddenly gained new insights, but because Tesla was proving that the market they said didn't exist was very real. But as Tesla prepared to begin actual production of the Roadster, as the company moved from prototype phase to the brutal reality of manufacturing at scale, new challenges were emerging. The capital requirements were escalating. The timeline was slipping. Tensions were rising within the company about strategy, priorities, and leadership. And most significantly, an investor who had joined the company in 2004 was taking an increasingly active role in company decisions. Elon Musk had originally come aboard as chairman and lead investor, providing crucial capital when Tesla desperately needed it. But as his involvement deepened, the dynamics within the company began to shift in ways that would have profound consequences for the founders who had risked everything to create Tesla. The battle against the automotive industry was far from over, but an even more painful battle was about to begin, a battle for control of the company itself. In early 2004, Tesla Motors was at a critical juncture. Martin Eberhard and Marc Tarpenning had proven the concept, assembled a brilliant engineering team, and created prototypes that were turning heads and changing minds. But they were burning through cash at an alarming rate, and the path to production required capital that dwarfed everything they had raised so far. They needed a major investor, someone with deep pockets, risk tolerance, and belief in their vision. That investor arrived in the form of Elon Musk, fresh off selling PayPal to eBay for $1.5 billion and looking for his next world-changing venture. Musk's entrance seemed like salvation. He led a Series A investment round of $7.5 million, giving Tesla the financial runway it desperately needed. His involvement brought more than just money. It brought credibility, connections, and media attention that an unknown startup could never generate on its own. Musk was already building a reputation as a visionary entrepreneur willing to tackle impossible problems, having recently founded SpaceX with the audacious goal of making humanity a multiplanetary species. His endorsement of Tesla signaled to other investors and the media that electric vehicles weren't just viable, they were the future. At first, the relationship seemed ideal. Musk took the role of chairman while Eberhard remained CEO, allowing the founder to focus on the technical and operational challenges of bringing the Roadster to production. Musk was enthusiastic, engaged, and willing to invest more capital as the company's needs grew. He understood technology, appreciated the engineering challenges, and shared the founder's conviction that electric vehicles would revolutionize transportation. Board meetings were productive, strategic decisions were collaborative, and everyone seemed aligned on the mission to prove that electric cars could be better than gasoline-powered vehicles in every measurable way. But beneath the surface, tensions were already beginning to form. Musk wasn't content to be a passive investor writing checks and attending quarterly board meetings. He had strong opinions about product design, marketing strategy, and company direction. He wanted the Roadster to be more luxurious, more expensive, more exclusive, positioning it not just as a performance vehicle but as a status symbol for wealthy early adopters. Eberhard, focused on bringing the car to production as efficiently as possible, sometimes found himself at odds with Musk's vision for a more ambitious, more costly vehicle. These weren't necessarily bad disagreements. They were the natural friction between an engineer focused on execution and an entrepreneur focused on maximum impact. As Musk's financial investment grew, he would eventually pour over $70 million into Tesla during these early years, so did his influence over company decisions. This is the uncomfortable reality of startup financing that founders everywhere understand too well. Whoever controls the capital ultimately controls the company. Musk's voting rights on the board increased with each funding round. His voice in strategic decisions grew louder. And gradually, subtly, the power dynamic shifted from Eberhard as founder-CEO making final calls to Musk as chairman and lead investor having effective veto power over major decisions. The production delays and cost overruns gave Musk additional leverage. Building cars turned out to be even more capital-intensive than anyone had projected. The Roadster was supposed to cost around $92,000 to produce and sell for $98,000. A thin margin that required near-perfect execution. But as production challenges mounted, costs escalated dramatically. Suddenly, each Roadster was costing over $120,000 to build, turning every sale into a massive loss. Tesla needed more capital injections to survive, and Musk was the only investor willing and able to provide it. With each rescue financing, his control tightened. The media narrative was shifting in ways that must have been painful for Eberhard and Tarpenning to watch. Journalists covering Tesla increasingly focused on Musk as the face of the company. His charisma, his quotable sound bites, his compelling personal story of risking his fortune on crazy ventures. It all made for better headlines than profiles of quiet engineers solving battery management problems. News articles began referring to Musk as Tesla's founder, or at minimum as the co-founder, despite his having joined the company a year after its incorporation. The public perception was being rewritten in real time, and the actual founders were watching their contributions fade from the narrative. By 2007, the tensions that had been simmering erupted into open conflict. Production of the Roadster was behind schedule and over budget. The board, now dominated by Musk's allies and appointees, was losing confidence in Eberhard's ability to manage the transition from engineering-focused startup to production-scale automotive company. Fair or not, the founder who had birthed the vision and solved the impossible technical problems was being blamed for the operational challenges of scaling that vision. In August of 2007, Eberhard was removed as CEO, a decision driven primarily by Musk and the board members he controlled. The public explanation was corporate boilerplate, a mutual decision to bring in experienced automotive executives to guide the company through its next phase of growth. But the reality was more brutal. Eberhard had been pushed out of the company he founded, forced to watch from the sidelines as others took credit for his work. He initially remained with the company as president of technology, a face-saving role that gave him some ongoing involvement, but even that position wouldn't last. Within months, he would be gone entirely, and Marc Tarpenning would follow soon after, leaving Tesla completely in Musk's control. The irony is almost too perfect to believe. The two engineers who conceived Tesla, who solved the technical problems everyone said were unsolvable, who created the Roadster that proved electric vehicles could be desirable high-performance machines, they were cast aside just as their creation was finally reaching production. Meanwhile, the investor who arrived after the company was founded, who contributed capital rather than the core technological innovations, would become synonymous with the Tesla brand. History was being rewritten not through malice but through the cold mathematics of startup power dynamics. Whoever has the capital calls the shots. Was Musk's increasing control inevitable? Probably. Was his vision for Tesla ultimately more ambitious and impactful than what the original founders might have achieved? Possibly. Did his leadership drive Tesla to become the industry-transforming company it is today? Absolutely. But none of that changes the fundamental injustice of the narrative that emerged. One where the true founders were erased from history, their contributions minimized or forgotten, their names unknown to the millions of people who now associate Tesla exclusively with Elon Musk. This isn't a story with clear villains and heroes. It's a story about the complicated, often unfair reality of how innovation gets funded, controlled, and remembered. And as we'll see in the next chapter, the removal of Eberhard and Tarpenning was just the beginning of a corporate saga that would get even messier before the dust finally settled. The removal of Martin Eberhard as CEO in August 2007 was just the opening act of a corporate drama that would expose the brutal realities of Silicon Valley power struggles. What followed was a slow-motion train wreck that saw both original founders systematically pushed out of the company they had created, their contributions minimized, their legacies questioned, and their names scrubbed from the official narrative. This wasn't a clean break or an amicable parting of ways. This was corporate warfare, and the casualties were the very people who had risked everything to make Tesla possible. After his removal as CEO, Eberhard was given the consolatory title of President of Technology, a role that theoretically allowed him to continue contributing to the company's technical direction while new leadership handled operations. But this arrangement was always temporary, always unstable. The new interim CEO, Michael Marc, lasted only a few months before being replaced by Zeev Drory, another automotive industry veteran brought in to professionalize the company's operations. With each leadership change, Eberhard's influence diminished further. He was becoming a figurehead in the company he founded, invited to meetings but increasingly excluded from real decision-making. By December 2007, just 4 months after losing the CEO role, Eberhard was forced out entirely. The official statement was vague corporate speak about moving in different directions and pursuing new opportunities. The reality was that Musk and the board he now controlled had decided that Eberhard's continued presence was more liability than asset. Perhaps they felt he was a reminder of a messier, more chaotic past they wanted to leave behind. Perhaps they worried he would undermine the new leadership team. Or perhaps it was simply easier to rewrite history with the original founder completely out of the picture. Whatever the reasoning, Martin Eberhard, the engineer who conceived Tesla, who solved the battery problems, who built the first Roadster, was shown the door. Marc Tarpenning, ever the quieter partner, lasted slightly longer but suffered the same fate. By mid-2008, he too was gone from Tesla, departing with even less fanfare than Eberhard. The two founders who had started this journey together in 2003, who had risked their personal fortunes and reputations on a vision everyone said was impossible, were now watching from the outside as others took their company in new directions. The speed and completeness of their erasure from Tesla's story would have been almost unbelievable if it weren't documented in legal filings and sworn testimony. But Eberhard wasn't going to fade quietly into obscurity. In June 2009, he filed a lawsuit against Musk and Tesla, alleging libel, slander, and breach of contract. The lawsuit laid bare the ugly reality of what had transpired. Eberhard claimed that Musk had systematically rewritten history, positioning himself as Tesla's founder despite joining the company a year after its incorporation. He alleged that Musk had damaged his reputation by blaming him publicly for the cost overruns and production delays that were actually caused by Musk's own demands for a more expensive, more complex vehicle. The lawsuit sought to restore Eberhard's reputation and force Tesla to acknowledge his role as the company's true founder. The legal battle revealed just how contentious the founder question had become. Tesla's position, backed by Musk, was that there were 5 co-founders: Musk, Eberhard, Tarpenning, and 2 early employees, J.B. Straubel and Ian Wright. This creative reframing conveniently elevated Musk to founder status while diluting Eberhard and Tarpenning's claims to being the original creators. It was linguistic gymnastics designed to solve a PR problem. Musk couldn't claim to be the sole founder because that was demonstrably false, but he also didn't want to acknowledge Eberhard and Tarpenning as the founders while he was merely an investor. The solution was to declare everyone a co-founder, creating a false equivalence between people who had wildly different roles in the company's creation. The lawsuit was eventually settled in September 2009, with all parties agreeing to call themselves co-founders, and Musk acknowledging that Eberhard and Tarpenning were indeed instrumental in the company's founding. It was a partial victory for Eberhard. His role was officially recognized, and he could once again use the title of co-founder. But the settlement couldn't undo the years of narrative damage. The media had already internalized the story of Tesla as Elon Musk's company. The public consciousness had been shaped by countless articles, interviews, and profiles that centered Musk as the visionary behind the electric vehicle revolution. A legal settlement, no matter how clear its terms, couldn't compete with years of accumulated media narrative. The psychological toll on Eberhard and Tarpenning must have been devastating. Imagine spending years of your life solving impossible problems, risking your financial security, sacrificing time with family, enduring countless failures and setbacks, all to create something revolutionary. Then, just as your creation achieves the success you always believed was possible, you're pushed out and watch as someone else takes credit for your work. The financial compensation from their equity stakes would eventually make them both wealthy. Tesla's later success ensured that. But money can't buy back your reputation, can't restore the recognition you deserve, can't erase the injustice of having your legacy stolen. The irony of the situation is almost painful. Musk's leadership absolutely was crucial to Tesla's eventual success. His vision for mass-market electric vehicles like the Model S, his willingness to invest his entire fortune when the company nearly went bankrupt during the financial crisis, his ability to attract top talent and maintain investor confidence. These contributions were enormous and probably necessary for Tesla to become the company it is today. But acknowledging Musk's importance doesn't require erasing Eberhard and Tarpenning. The truth is that Tesla required both the original founder's technical genius and Musk's business vision and capital. This isn't a zero-sum game where recognizing one group diminishes the other. Yet that's exactly how history has treated it. Ask a random person on the street who founded Tesla, and 99 out of 100 will say Elon Musk. Ask them about Martin Eberhard or Marc Tarpenning, and you'll get blank stares. The narrative has been so thoroughly rewritten that the actual founders of the company have been reduced to footnotes, their contributions minimized to early employees, or at best original co-founders whose roles are never clearly explained. This erasure wasn't accidental. It was the result of years of media coverage that focused exclusively on Musk, company communications that downplayed the founders' contributions, and a general tendency to attribute success to charismatic individual leaders rather than collaborative teams. The legal settlement brought an official end to the dispute, but it couldn't restore what had been lost. Eberhard and Tarpenning had their titles back, had some public acknowledgement of their roles, but they had lost their company and their place in the story of one of the most important technological revolutions of the 21st century. And as Tesla moved forward, as the Roadster gave way to the Model S and then the Model 3 and then global expansion, the original founders faded further into obscurity, their names mentioned less and less, their contributions assumed to be minor compared to Musk's supposed genius. The betrayal was complete, and history had been successfully rewritten. Strip away the corporate drama, the founder disputes, and the boardroom battles, and you're left with the undeniable truth. The Tesla Roadster was a technological masterpiece that fundamentally changed what the world believed was possible with electric vehicles. This wasn't just an incremental improvement over existing electric cars. It was a quantum leap that obliterated every assumption the automotive industry had spent a century building. And the engineering breakthroughs that made it possible came directly from the minds of Martin Eberhard, Marc Tarpenning, and the brilliant team they assembled in those early, chaotic years. Let's talk about the battery pack, because this is where Tesla's genius truly shone. Every previous electric vehicle had struggled with the same fundamental problem. Batteries were heavy, expensive, had limited capacity, and degraded quickly. The industry consensus was that these limitations were insurmountable, that battery technology simply wasn't advanced enough for practical electric vehicles. Eberhard and his team looked at this conventional wisdom and asked a simple question. What if we're thinking about this wrong? Instead of waiting for someone to invent a magical new battery chemistry, what if we could use existing technology in a completely new way? The solution was brilliant in its simplicity and terrifying in its complexity. They would use thousands of commodity lithium-ion cells, the same 18650 format cells powering laptop computers, and pack them into a sophisticated battery management system. The final design contained 6,831 individual cells, arranged in precise configurations to optimize energy density, weight distribution, and thermal management. Each cell had to be monitored individually, balanced perfectly with its neighbors, kept within precise temperature ranges, and protected from overcharge or excessive discharge. One mistake could trigger a cascade failure, turning the entire pack into an inferno. The battery management software was a marvel of engineering that would make any computer scientist appreciate the complexity involved. The system performed thousands of calculations per second, monitoring voltage, current, and temperature for every single cell. It predicted degradation patterns, optimized charging strategies, and managed power delivery to maximize both performance and longevity. This wasn't automotive engineering as Detroit understood it. This was Silicon Valley bringing software sophistication to a hardware problem, treating the battery pack like a massive parallel computing system that happened to store electricity instead of processing data. The cooling system alone represented years of development and countless failed prototypes. Lithium-ion cells generate heat during charging and discharging, and managing that heat across nearly 7,000 cells packed tightly together required unprecedented thermal engineering. Tesla developed a glycol coolant system that snaked through the battery pack, absorbing heat and distributing it evenly to prevent hotspots that could trigger thermal runaway. The system had to work flawlessly in Arizona summers exceeding 115 degrees and Minnesota winters dropping below zero. Every component was tested to destruction multiple times before the design was finalized. The electric motor and power electronics were equally revolutionary. AC propulsion provided the initial motor design, but Tesla's engineers completely reimagined how to control and optimize it. The three-phase AC induction motor delivered 248 horsepower and 214 pound-feet of torque, numbers that don't fully capture the visceral experience of instant, linear power delivery from 0 RPM. There was no transmission in the traditional sense, just a single-speed gearbox that delivered power directly to the rear wheels. The power electronics that converted DC battery power to AC motor power handled currents exceeding 200 amps, while remaining compact enough to fit within the tight confines of the Lotus chassis. The chassis itself was a masterpiece of weight optimization and structural engineering. Based on the Lotus Elise platform but extensively modified for electric propulsion, the Roadster used aerospace-grade aluminum and carbon fiber composites to achieve a curb weight of just 2,777 pounds, remarkably light considering the battery pack alone weighed nearly 1,000 pounds. The low-mounted battery pack lowered the center of gravity dramatically, giving the Roadster handling characteristics that even gasoline-powered sports cars couldn't match. Weight distribution was nearly perfect at 41% front, 59% rear, creating neutral handling that made the car incredibly responsive and predictable at the limit. But here's what made the Roadster truly revolutionary. It wasn't just about raw performance numbers. It was about the complete package, the integration of every system into a cohesive whole that was greater than the sum of its parts. The regenerative braking system captured energy during deceleration, extending range by up to 10% in city driving. The sophisticated traction control used the electric motor's instantaneous torque response to prevent wheel slip far more effectively than any gasoline-powered system could manage. The absence of an engine, transmission, exhaust system, and all the associated complexity meant fewer parts to fail, lower maintenance costs, and a fundamentally simpler, more reliable vehicle. The performance numbers told the story that changed everything. 0 to 60 miles per hour in 3.7 seconds. Faster than a Porsche 911. A quarter-mile time of 13.3 seconds at 107 miles per hour. A top speed of 125 miles per hour. And most importantly, a real-world range of 244 miles on a single charge. More than double what skeptics believed was possible. These weren't projections or estimates. These were actual, verified, repeatable results that journalists and customers experienced firsthand. Every test drive was a conversion experience that demolished decades of assumptions about electric vehicle limitations. The Roadster's impact on the automotive industry cannot be overstated. Before its introduction, electric vehicles were glorified golf carts. Slow, limited, compromised machines that no car enthusiast would choose voluntarily. After the Roadster, that narrative was dead. Tesla had proven beyond any doubt that electric vehicles could be faster, more efficient, more technologically advanced, and more desirable than anything powered by internal combustion. The major automakers who had dismissed electric vehicles as impractical suddenly found themselves scrambling to develop their own electric vehicle programs. terrified of being left behind by a startup they had mocked. Every technical breakthrough in the Roadster, the battery management system, the power electronics, the motor control algorithms, the thermal management, these innovations didn't emerge from Elon Musk's genius. They came from Martin Eberhard, Marc Tarpenning, and the engineering team they built during those crucial early years when Tesla was figuring out how to make electric vehicles work. The patents bore their names. The technical documentation showed their fingerprints. The breakthroughs that made Tesla possible happened before Musk took control, conceived by founders who are now forgotten by most people who drive electric vehicles today. The Roadster production run lasted from 2008 to 2012, with approximately 2,450 units built. Each one was a technological marvel, a rolling proof of concept that demonstrated the viability of electric transportation. And each one was a testament to the vision and engineering brilliance of the founders who dared to imagine that electric vehicles could be better than everything that came before. Their names may have been erased from the popular narrative, but their innovations live on in every electric vehicle on the road today. History, they say, is written by the victors. In the case of Tesla Motors, history was rewritten by whoever controlled the narrative, and by 2010, that narrative belonged entirely to Elon Musk. The transformation was so complete, so thorough, that millions of people around the world genuinely believe that Musk founded Tesla, that he conceived the vision of high-performance electric vehicles, that he solved the technical problems that made the Roadster possible. This isn't just a minor historical footnote getting corrected. This is the systematic erasure of the actual founders from one of the most important technological stories of the 21st century. How does something like this happen? How do two brilliant engineers who risked everything to create a revolutionary company get written out of their own story? The answer is a combination of media dynamics, corporate messaging, charismatic personality, and the uncomfortable truth that most people don't dig deeper than headlines. Elon Musk is a compelling figure, a billionaire entrepreneur with grand visions, quotable sound bites, and a flair for dramatic pronouncements. He's excellent at capturing media attention and shaping narratives. Martin Eberhard and Marc Tarpenning, by contrast, were engineers brilliant at solving technical problems but less interested in self-promotion and media manipulation. The media's role in this historical revision cannot be overstated. Journalists love simple, clean narratives centered around charismatic individuals. The story of a visionary billionaire risking his fortune to save the planet with electric vehicles is infinitely more compelling than the messy reality of multiple founders, corporate conflicts, and collaborative innovation. So articles about Tesla increasingly focused on Musk, using his quotes, featuring his photograph, and reinforcing the association between the man and the company. With each profile, each interview, each news story, the connection between Musk and Tesla's founding grew stronger in public consciousness, regardless of the actual historical facts. Tesla's own corporate communications accelerated this process. After Eberhard's departure and the legal settlement that allowed multiple people to use the co-founder title, Tesla's official messaging became deliberately vague about the company's origins. Press releases and investor presentations mentioned the founding team collectively without emphasizing the actual sequence of events or who contributed what. The company website listed 5 co-founders without explaining that 2 of them, Eberhard and Tarpenning, had incorporated the company a year before Musk invested. This strategic ambiguity allowed the public to assume that all 5 founders were equally involved from day one, conveniently elevating Musk's role while diminishing the actual founders' contributions. Social media amplified the revisionist narrative exponentially. As Twitter, Facebook, and other platforms exploded in popularity during the late 2000s and early 2010s, Musk became a social media phenomenon. His Twitter account amassed millions of followers who hung on his every word, retweeted his pronouncements, and defended him passionately against any criticism. When Musk tweeted about Tesla's early days, his version of events reached millions of people instantly. When Eberhard tried to correct the record, his much smaller platform meant his voice was drowned out by the noise. In the attention economy of social media, reach equals truth, and Musk had infinitely more reach than the actual founders. The battles over Tesla's founding perfectly illustrate how contested this history became. For years, Editors fought over whether the company should be described as founded by Eberhard and Tarpenning in 2003 with Musk joining as an investor in 2004, or whether all 5 co-founders should be listed as equal founders. Sources were cited, deleted, and cited again. Talk pages filled with arguments about what constituted founding versus co-founding versus early employment. Eventually, the article settled on listing 5 co-founders without clearly explaining the actual sequence of events, a compromise that technically accurate but historically misleading. What makes this erasure particularly galling is that nobody disputes the basic facts. Tesla Motors was incorporated on July 1, 2003, by Martin Eberhard and Marc Tarpenning. The company was named, the initial business plan was written, and the technical approach was conceived before Elon Musk invested a single dollar. Musk himself has acknowledged in legal documents that he joined the company in February 2004 as chairman and lead investor. These aren't contested claims. They're documented facts in incorporation papers, investment agreements, and court filings. Yet somehow the public narrative evolved to credit Musk as the founder or at minimum as an equal co-founder from the beginning. The question of who deserves to be called a founder might seem semantic, but it matters profoundly. Founding a company means conceiving the vision, taking the initial risk, and creating something from nothing. Investing in a company, even with enormous sums of money and even taking an active role in its growth, is a different contribution. Both are valuable, both are necessary, but they're not the same thing, and conflating them does a disservice to actual founders everywhere who risk everything before anyone else believes in their vision. Eberhard and Tarpenning founded Tesla. Musk invested in it, grew it, and transformed it into something far bigger than the original founders might have achieved. Both statements can be true simultaneously. The automotive industry's coverage of Tesla compounded the problem. As Tesla's success became undeniable and traditional automakers scrambled to develop their own electric vehicle programs, journalists needed someone to interview, someone to quote, someone to represent Tesla's perspective. That person was always Elon Musk. He was the CEO, the public face, the quotable source who would engage with media on any topic. Eberhard and Tarpenning, pushed out years earlier, weren't available for comment and wouldn't have been sought out even if they were. With each article that quoted Musk about Tesla's vision and origins, the narrative solidified further. There's a bitter irony in how this historical revision mirrors the very story that Tesla was named after. Nikola Tesla, the brilliant Serbian-American inventor, made groundbreaking contributions to electrical engineering that enabled the modern world. Yet for decades, he was overshadowed by Thomas Edison, who was better at business, better at self-promotion, and better at controlling the narrative. History eventually corrected that injustice, recognizing Tesla's enormous contributions even though it took generations. One wonders if future historians will eventually correct the record about Tesla Motors' founding, acknowledging that while Musk's contributions were enormous, the actual founders were 2 engineers whose names most people have never heard. The legal settlement forced Tesla to acknowledge Eberhard and Tarpenning as co-founders, but legal recognition doesn't translate to public awareness. Ask 100 people on the street who founded Tesla, and you'll get near-unanimous responses: Elon Musk. The few who know there were other co-founders usually can't name them or explain their roles. This isn't because people are stupid or uninformed. It's because the narrative has been so thoroughly established through years of media coverage, corporate messaging, and Musk's own enormous public presence that it has become accepted fact regardless of the actual history. What's the lesson here? Perhaps it's that, in our celebrity-obsessed culture, credit flows to whoever has the biggest platform and the most compelling personal story. Perhaps it's that technical brilliance and actual innovation matter less for legacy than media savvy and charismatic leadership. Or perhaps it's simply that history is always more complex than the simplified narratives we tell ourselves, and sometimes the most important contributors are the ones whose names we never learn. Whatever the lesson, the rewriting of Tesla's founding story stands as a cautionary tale about how easily truth can be buried under layers of narrative, repeated until fiction becomes accepted fact. When you're forced out of the company you founded, when your name is systematically erased from the narrative you created, When the world credits someone else for your vision and innovations, what do you do next? For Martin Eberhard and Marc Tarpenning, the answer wasn't retirement or bitterness or endless litigation. It was what they had always done. Build things, solve problems, and push technology forward. Their lives after Tesla reveal something important about the kind of people who create revolutionary companies, and why their contributions matter even when history forgets their names.